And we're going to be looking at digital twin technology and reimagining the construction industry through digital twin technology. And we have with us Genéne Kleppe, who is the CEO and founder of Digital Twinning Australia. Genéne sits on the IEC panel, creating the international standard for digital twinning. She's also a panelist for Standards Australia, and she's advising on a proposed new ARC Industrial Transformation Training Centre, and is also an inaugural member of the Digital Twin Consortium. She's become a recognised global authority on multi-domain interoperability, and she is also, as I say, the founder and CEO of Digital Twinning Australia. So, have we got Genéne here? I will just promote you to panelist. Allow you to talk. She is.
Hello. Here I am.
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you. Do we have a video on as well? Ah, perfect.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, very well. So I've done the intro, and tell us everything we need to know about digital twinning.
I'm just working out how to just bring up. I've got a presentation that I'm going to walk through.
All right, you need to share your screen.
Here we go.
Perfect.
Can you see this now?
Yes, it's perfect.
Fantastic.
Yep, all good.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm very proud to be presenting here in the Technology in Construction Summit. What I'm going to do is I've got a slightly different tack to my previous colleague. I'm just going to run through a little bit of context. I'm then going to talk about reality as I see it in the world the construction world that I'm in. I want to spend a little bit of time on value before I then delve a little bit more deeper into what I'm seeing as really emergent before I close off. So firstly, context. A summit. I always am very pleased to be able to talk in a summit. It certainly makes you think differently about what it is that you're actually doing. And summit says we're supposed to be looking at the pinnacles and what are we aspiring to. And when you look at the marketplace and you see this enormous explosion of startups, we see emerging tech in all sorts of fields, and we see tech capability that's a little bit more variable, but it's actually quite broad and it's exciting and it's fun and there's lots of shiny things. But understanding really where the pinnacles are or where the summits are is something that I think we're going to be exploring for just a little bit longer. What we do know is that we have more tools than we can probably throw rocks at, whether that's augmented reality, virtual reality, immersive reality, and on goes the list, all the way down to digital twins that have got digital threads, which is quite different. I'll spend a bit more time uncovering that shortly. But our colleagues at McKinsey really have challenged the way that I think about technology and construction in a summit context, when they said that we're accelerating transformation in the construction sector from being highly complex, very fragmented and project-based to being something that's a little bit more standardised, consolidated and integrated. And when I think about the construction sector, I probably think more like this. Because I work in a big asset intensive construction area, a lot of engineering, a lot of bit of equipment, a bit of utilities. And so there are a lot of aging assets that are going through different cycles at the moment. And there's a lot of upgrading and a lot of new kit coming in amongst it. But what we've basically got is something that looks like that reality. The other reality that's being, I think, wonderfully sort of not challenging is probably not quite the right word, but it's really probably more confronting, is that the standards that we actually operate with. And so when in those early days of building information modelling, when we were trying to work out how to get data in, how to get data in a particular way so that we can, understand the different systems and structures and getting them interoperable, and the data just got bigger and bigger, and the standards went here, and different standards group discovered that they probably didn't get that bit right and they got this bit right. And then all of a sudden what we've got, which is what this slide is, which is pretty ugly, is only about 20 of 37 ontologies that are dealing with digital in all industry sectors around technology. And it's getting broader and broader. Startups are going, well, actually, all this is all a bit too hard, so we're going to create our own, which is what we're seeing. And it starts to get a bit, if you like, messy. I think this will all sort itself out. And as we get a bit smarter, when I look at it from a client perspective, I see something that looks a bit like this. We've got organisations that are collecting mountains and mountains of data. So whether it's from an ERP, whether it's from a drone, some sort of a sensor, some sort of a SCADA system of some description, whether we've, ventured into IoT, whatever it is, we're collecting data and we're storing it somewhere, and it's massive. This is where the millions of bits of data are. And what we're trying to do is work out, system health, assembly health, whether what we can predict to reduce costs around maintenance or extend asset life, those sorts of things. But the reason why organisations are kind of keep exploring technology during design and construction in particular is they're trying to optimise their decision making. And then they're building this middle layer, which is actually all trying to work out how to turn that information or all that data into something that's intelligent, because they need to continue to innovate. And so this is kind of the world, if you like, that organisations are in. Whether it's a big organisation, a small organisation, we're still all dealing with these things. Now, what I've discovered over the years is that when we're talking about data, or we're talking about assets, or we're talking about buildings, we actually have to qualify what it is that we're really talking about, because our words now, as we've become more complex, mean different things. Now, this little hierarchy here that you're looking at, from component to asset to system to enterprise, is a very simple way of trying to clarify what it is that we're actually talking about. And so the world that I live in is, as I said, it's in heavy industry. We're much more in the system and plant and enterprise or value chain level. And from there, we drill down into asset, machine or component, but I don't start down the bottom. So I'm not dealing with the worker. I'm actually dealing a little bit more strategically at the top. And there's a reason that I'm up at that level, and that's all to do with some of the fundamentals around money. But what I think is happening is that we're not segmenting now in technology in terms of which bit of kit we're working on, but I think it's actually about what level and what layer we're actually at. So are we at the worker level? Are we at the machine, or are we at the enterprise level? And so from that, we can say, okay, these are the sorts of technology issues that we're actually looking at. When I'm looking at an enterprise level, which says which pieces of kit actually are the absolutely fundamental to generating revenue. And then I go hunting for which components actually drive those strategic fundamentals. Because everything is about value and how we actually generate the value propositions. And value can get quite convoluted when we get buried down the bottom. And the shifts that are happening more broadly is that when we're designing, we need to be designing to operate, not necessarily just designing to construct. We're designing around livability in communities, and we're designing around platforms that allow us to share information, whether that's with my colleagues in a crane, or whether it's with a community, whether it's to do with air quality or whether it's to do with sunlight. Doesn't matter what it is, we need to be able to share it, and we need to be able to access it really from a supply chain arrangement. And I think for our sector, or the construction sector in particular, one of our priorities is actually around impact investment. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about what's happening in impact investment shortly. So the world, yes, is changing in lots of different ways, but we are actually having to rethink our fundamental paradigms. Because when we look at asset life cycles, we know that with physical assets, their value to begin with is really high, and they deteriorate over time and their value becomes absolutely nil. And then we spend the last part of the asset's life trying to extend it, improve it and do all sorts of things, while we push out having to replace it because the cost of capital is too high. Now, when we look at it from a digital perspective, we see that there is a view that the value of digital assets early on is actually quite low, but they don't come into their own until quite late. So we actually end up with, this view that says that we don't need to do it, and so it's more expensive or it's an extra cost, so we won't actually deal with putting in digital, when in actual fact, if we could digitise whilst we're actually dealing with those physical assets very early on, the cost of setup is actually quite low. Then we have this middle period where we've got physical assets deteriorating, which they're supposed to, just normal wear and tear, and we've got digital assets are collecting data. And this is a point where we're actually able to say, well, what actually is critical? What should I be focusing on, and what is going to make a difference when I look into the future? Because we're trying to find that sweet spot where we get this crossover between an increase in digital value and the decrease in the physical value. And that sweet spot is really where digital technologies start to become very, very valuable. Now, one of the fundamentals around assets is the total cost of ownership. Now, this is really important, I think, in the construction world, because our paradigm at the moment is that we actually design to construct. And so what we're doing is we're spending, we're optimising our costs to build something, to design and build something, and then the operating is kind of a separate environment. So what's visible is actually quite small compared to what's actually hidden or under the surface. And we do know these stats aren't anything new. We're running at about 15 to 25% is visible, and the hidden costs is up to 85%. What digital is doing for us, or has done for us, is it's actually reversed our iceberg. It's actually allowed us to have a look at what's under the surface and to start getting a better idea about how we actually can optimise the construction so that we prepare our environments, prepare our people, whether it's our workers when we're building, it's our workers when we're operating, whether it's the community environments that those workers are in, or where that construction actually exists. Those things become much more visible more earlier, so that the hidden costs or the hidden barriers that are going to cause sort of reputation or capital issues down the track can be minimised early, because it's cheaper for us to do it now. So this fundamental around total cost of ownership is the thing I think that's actually having quite a reasonable impact on technology in construction. Now, this is just a little case study. I wanted to just draw attention to this notion of the cost of capital and reputation, and bring that together differently, because we're in an industry for environment. And what we're able to do as an industry for environment is, in this example, take social infrastructure and say, okay, in the energy and mining sectors, we have massive skill shortages. And as things become more rapidly into a digital environment, those skills shortages are actually going to become exponential. So what if we could think about this differently and use technology from design and construction and put it somewhere where we can start to discover how to change the way that technology is actually being used and understood by people, because those people are going to become our labour force. And in this example, we're doing it with a school. And the bigger picture is about ESG and the cost of capital. But just simply to say that phase one is about energy systems, that they've been twinned. We're now moving into a virtual power plant, and as a result of this energy system and the virtual power plant, we'll have electric vehicle charging. And that then makes links actually into communities and also as new work experience, and therefore workers with other, with the mining companies or energy companies. Now, the real point that I wanted to make here is that this project is actually all about platforms. So what McKinsey was talking about when it was saying it's more, we've got to be more standardised, consolidated and integrated, they did draw attention to 3 points. First one was around supply chain and who has control over these digital threads. And if we just take this example of the energy system, if I've got that energy system and I'm genuinely kind of thinking out into the future a little bit, then what it is that I'm actually going to end up, if you like, having greater control over electric vehicle charging. Now, at the moment, we've got everybody running around trying to say, well, we're just going to have all these new Bowsers and they're going to be in different locations and somebody else is going to buy it. But we could actually rechange that whole thing, and they could be in schools, and schools could be trading energy. So the point is that what you've got is that we are starting to see shifts in how these digital threads actually work, and how, if you could hang on to that data or actually be controlling much earlier the beginnings of those threads, then you're actually looking quite differently in terms of where you fit in a supply chain, because you could be controlling it. The other one was to do with better connected technical tools. So again, this is around, if you can design to construct, well, okay, thanks very much. I've got a DNC. No, I'm not really worried about the total cost of ownership before, but now I'm actually going to have to. Or if I did worry about the total cost of ownership, does that mean that now I can actually create new revenue streams for me moving forward, or am I going to be out of that? Now, these questions that construction, say in the building sector, have dealt with over the years, and they've decided to be, no, I'm just going to be the constructor. I'm not going to worry about the maintenance, or I'm not going to worry about the servicing. And so the market's kind of, theoretically, it's been through those things. Now what we're actually able to do is actually see how better connected tools is actually going to reframe what's going on there. The other one is actually all then to do with multidimensional analytics. So we've had, process control systems industry, supervisory control, the SCADA type systems we've had for eons, and not a lot's changed. We've just got better black boxes for all that information to sit in. Now, what we're definitely seeing with Industry 4 and in any of the projects that where we've actually been involved in digitally twinning, is that the point-to-point is too single-dimensional, and it's actually generating a lot of unnecessary data, and data is very expensive. So thinking differently about how we're going to manage that data cost is probably one of those things that I think over the next 3 to 5 years, particularly in the construction sector, we're going to have to get a whole lot better at. And analytics does matter. It matters. The analytics around what the user is going to do, which is in this operate context, that's what matters, and we need to be focused on that. Just as a little aside, in this building, it's actually a school, and we did put the information or the twin into the school. And we've got grade 4s They've managed to, using digital twin technologies, which is a highly visualised version of a digital twin, and it's actually sitting not down the bottom, if you like. I like to sit it up the top. And they've calculated the solar hours that they need to run 800 laptops. They've worked out that their solar panels will only run those laptops for 2 hours. Now, if you just stop and think about that for a minute, they're actually in grade 4 and they've worked that out. And we've just simply provided them with the tools. There's a couple of really clever kids in there that teach everybody else, teach the other kids. The teachers don't teach it. It's all a bit too hard for them. No, it's not too hard. They don't need to. The kids can do it. We don't actually have to be involved. It's anyone who's got children, you give them an iPhone and they're kind of born knowing what to do with it. It's the same thing. Now, those kids in 2027 will be trading will be energy trading, and they'll only be in grade 10. So by the time they're in grade 12 in 2030, they are going to be the school leaders. And these children are the ones who are going to be making unbelievable shifts in society and economic value as a result of understanding the value of technology in day-to-day activities. So it's not some rocket science anymore. They're actually going to grow up with it, which is a wonderful thing. Now, just want to bring it back to another fundamental. Fundamentals in business is the money's got to be cheap. I've got to look after my reputation, which is a growing thing. And I've actually got to understand where the value is. Now, when I'm chasing capital, the best capital is impact investment capital. But impact investment capital comes with a lot more conditions attached to it, and all those conditions are actually around ESG. And if you can bring those two things together, which is simply around, you can have cheaper capital if you can measure and prove that the societal and economic impacts of communities will improve, you can have cheap capital. Now, it's been very, very difficult for that to be demonstrated or measured or proven. But with Industry 4, right, so with clever tech, that whether I'm purely in construction or I'm purely in design, it's the same tech. It's just how I use that tech. And if I can use that tech to actually measure ESG, which means I've got to do things properly, then on the balance sheet, we've got better IRR, better NVPs, our return on capital employed multipliers go through the roof. Now, in closing, future construction in technology, value needs a context, not just a problem. And what I mean by that is that problem, there's more problems we can poke a stick at, but what is the context that we're operating in? And if we can actually find a context that sits in the fundamentals and we can link it and we can prove it with technology, then that's much more valuable than just having a problem. And not to diminish, AR, IR, or twinning per se. It's not to diminish those things, but in and of themselves, they're just another shiny thing, and we need more than shiny things as we're moving forward in this construction phase that we're in. Being bold and resilient. It's really easy to just keep on doing the same old thing that we've always done and pretend it's actually changing when it's not. We actually really do need to be much more demanding of interoperable platforms, because those platforms are the things that are going to generate the different futures that we're actually being put into. Those kids that are in grade 4 today, they're going to know about these things. And they're only going to be 17 and 18 when they come out of school, and they're going to demand it. And so, we need to make sure that we're ready and can keep our jobs by the time they get there. The other one is that digital does create real world societal and economic shifts. We've proven it. I've got a thing about walking the talk. I go and do it. I just don't like talking about it. I'd actually like to go and prove some of the things, and we are proving right now that those things are actually real and we can shift it. And so on that note, Thank you very much and stay safe.